Hello everyone. Welcome back to Hold On Survival Stories. I'm your host, and how are you all doing today? I hope you're having an amazing day and you're ready for another absolutely incredible survival story. Because today's episode is going to take you on an emotional journey that proves the power of family bonds under the most extreme circumstances. Before we dive in, I want to give a huge thank you to everyone who's been supporting our channel. Your likes, comments, and subscriptions mean everything to me and help us bring you these incredible real-life survival stories every week. And for those of you who are new here, make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because trust me, you don't want to miss any of these amazing stories. Grab your headphones and get ready for a powerful survival story that proves sometimes the strongest survival tool isn't equipment or training, it's the love between a parent and child. Today we're heading to the remote Rocky Mountains for a story that will show you just how far a father will go to protect his daughter, and how a teenager's courage can inspire heroic actions when everything is on the line. This story will demonstrate how family relationships can become the ultimate source of strength, how different generations bring different survival skills to crisis situations, and how shared trauma can actually heal old wounds and create unbreakable bonds. You'll witness how 48 hours in the wilderness after a plane crash can test not just survival skills, but the very foundation of a father-daughter relationship that had been struggling to connect. This is the story of 45-year-old David Chen, an experienced pilot and busy executive, and his 16-year-old daughter Emma, and how their weekend bonding flight became a 48-hour fight for survival that would transform their relationship forever and prove that when it comes to protecting the people we love, ordinary parents can become extraordinary heroes. So grab your favorite drink, get comfortable, and let's dive into this absolutely incredible tale of survival that shows us the power of family love can overcome even the most impossible odds. Saturday morning, September 23, 2023, dawned perfect for flying in the Colorado Rockies. The sky was clear, winds were light, and visibility was unlimited. Exactly the conditions that 45-year-old David Chen had been hoping for when he planned this weekend flight with his 16-year-old daughter, Emma. For David, a successful tech executive and licensed pilot with over 1,200 flight hours, this trip represented more than just a recreational flight. It was an attempt to reconnect with a daughter who had been growing increasingly distant as she navigated the typical challenges of teenage life. David and Emma's relationship had been strained for the past year, as Emma dealt with the pressures of high school, college preparation, and the normal process of asserting independence from her parents. David's demanding career at a Denver software company meant long hours and frequent business travel, leaving little time for the close father-daughter bond they had shared when Emma was younger. "This will be good for us," David had told his wife Lisa when planning the trip. "Just Emma and me, flying to Aspen for lunch, maybe doing some sightseeing from the air, no phones, no distractions, just time to talk and reconnect." Emma had agreed to the trip somewhat reluctantly, more out of guilt than enthusiasm. At 16, she was more interested in spending Saturday with her friends than flying with her father, but she recognized that David was making an effort to spend time with her despite his busy schedule. David's Cessna 172, a well-maintained four-seat aircraft that he had owned for 8 years, was perfect for scenic flights through the Colorado mountains. The plane was equipped with modern avionics, GPS navigation, an emergency locator beacon, all the safety equipment that responsible mountain flying required. Their planned route was straightforward and well within David's experience level. Depart from Centennial Airport near Denver, fly west through the mountains to Aspen, have lunch at the airport restaurant,
then return home by mid-afternoon. The total flight time would be about 3 hours, with spectacular mountain scenery that David hoped would impress Emma and provide opportunities for conversation. "Ready for an adventure, Em?" David asked as they conducted the pre-flight inspection of the aircraft. Emma was checking the control surfaces while David verified fuel levels and engine condition, a routine they had performed together dozens of times over the years. "I guess," Emma replied with the characteristic teenager enthusiasm that David had learned not to take personally. "The weather looks amazing. We should get some great views." Emma had been flying with her father since she was 10 years old and was comfortable around aircraft, though she had never shown much interest in learning to pilot herself. David secretly hoped that this trip might rekindle some of Emma's childhood fascination with flying and provide a shared activity they could pursue together. At 10:30 a.m., David and Emma departed Centennial Airport in perfect weather conditions. The early autumn air was smooth, visibility was unlimited, and the Rocky Mountains stretched before them in all their spectacular glory. For the first hour of flight, the trip was everything David had hoped for. Emma was engaged, asking questions about the terrain below, and they were having the kind of easy conversation that had become rare in recent months. "Dad, look at those peaks," Emma said, pointing toward the Sawtooth Range. "They're incredible from up here. You can see the snow line starting already." "That's Mount Elbert," David replied, pleased to see Emma interested in their surroundings. "Maybe we can plan a hiking trip there next summer." For 90 minutes, everything went perfectly according to plan. They flew through mountain passes that David knew well, enjoying smooth air and spectacular views while having the kind of father-daughter conversation that David had been hoping to share. Emma even took some photos with her phone to show her friends, and David began to feel optimistic that this trip was accomplishing his goal of reconnecting with his daughter. At 12 p.m., as they approached the Aspen area and David began preparing for their landing, everything changed in a way that would test both their survival skills and their relationship in ways neither could have imagined. David first noticed the change in engine sound, a slight roughness that immediately caught his attention as an experienced pilot. Within seconds, the roughness became more pronounced, and David realized they were experiencing a serious engine problem that could force an emergency landing in some of the most challenging terrain in North America. "Dad, what's that noise?" Emma asked, her voice showing the first signs of concern as she noticed the change in engine sound and David's suddenly tense body language. "We're having an engine problem, Em," David replied, his voice calm but serious as he began executing emergency procedures. "I'm going to need you to help me with some things while I try to find us a place to land." As David began troubleshooting their engine problem and looking for emergency landing options in the mountainous terrain below, neither he nor Emma could have predicted that their recreational flight was about to become a 48-hour test of survival skills, family bonds, and the incredible strength that people can find when protecting the ones they love most. At 12:03 p.m. on September 23, 2023, David Chen faced every pilot's worst nightmare: complete engine failure over mountainous terrain with his 16-year-old daughter as his only passenger. The Cessna 172's engine had gone from running rough to complete silence in less than 30 seconds, leaving them gliding toward the Colorado Rockies with limited options for emergency landing sites. "Emma, I need you to listen carefully," David said, his voice maintaining the calm, authoritative tone he had learned during his pilot training for handling emergencies. "Our engine has stopped, but we're okay. I'm trained for this, and I'm going to get us down safely." Emma's eyes went wide with fear, but she nodded, trusting in her father's experience and calm demeanor. "What do you need me to do, Dad?" David was already executing emergency procedures, configuring the aircraft for best glide speed while scanning the terrain below for potential landing sites. The mountainous terrain offered few good options. Most of the area below them consisted of steep slopes, dense forest, and rocky outcroppings that would be unsurvivable in a forced landing. "Emma, I need you to help me look for flat areas where we might be able to land," David said, while simultaneously working through his emergency checklist. "Look for meadows, clearings, anything that looks smooth and relatively flat." David's pilot training had prepared him for engine failures, but the reality of flying a powerless aircraft over the Rocky Mountains with his daughter aboard was testing every skill he had ever learned. He had perhaps 8 to 10 minutes of gliding time before they would be forced to land, whether they found a suitable site or not. At 12:06 p.m., Emma spotted what appeared to be a small meadow in a valley about 5 miles ahead. "Dad, there's a flat area over there, near that lake. Is that big enough?" David looked where Emma was pointing and saw a small alpine meadow that was probably just long enough for an emergency landing if he could manage the approach perfectly. The meadow was surrounded by trees and had rising terrain on both ends, making it a challenging approach that would require precise flying with no room for error. "That's going to have to work," David said, configuring the aircraft for the emergency landing approach. "Emma, I need you to make sure your seatbelt is tight and put your head down when I tell you to. This is going to be rough." David's approach to the meadow required all of his flying skill and experience. Without engine power, he had only one chance to get the approach right. Too high, and they would overshoot into the trees. Too low, and they would hit the trees before reaching the meadow. The margin for error was essentially zero. "Emma, head down now," David commanded, as they approached the meadow at what seemed like an impossibly steep angle. Emma immediately assumed the crash position she had seen demonstrated on airline safety videos, tucking her head down and bracing for impact. At 12:09 p.m., the Cessna 172 touched down hard in the alpine meadow, bouncing twice before settling into a ground roll that seemed to last forever. David fought to keep the aircraft straight as they rolled across the uneven terrain, using every technique he knew to prevent the plane from ground looping or hitting the trees that bordered both sides of their impromptu runway. The aircraft finally came to a stop approximately 50 feet from the tree line at the far end of the meadow. For several seconds, David and Emma sat in complete silence, processing the fact that they had survived what could easily have been a fatal crash. "Em, are you okay?" David asked, immediately checking his daughter for injuries, while his hands shook from adrenaline and relief. "I think so," Emma replied, her voice shaking as she realized what they had just been through. "Dad, that was incredible. You saved us." David's pilot training immediately kicked in as he began assessing their situation. They were alive and apparently uninjured, but they were also stranded in a remote alpine meadow at approximately 9,500 elevation, with limited survival supplies and no immediate prospect of rescue. But as David began shutting down the aircraft systems and preparing to evacuate the plane, he discovered that their ordeal was just beginning. Emma's initial assessment of being uninjured had been premature. She was experiencing sharp pain in her left shoulder and difficulty moving her arm, suggesting a possible fracture or dislocation from the hard landing. "Dad, something's wrong with my shoulder," Emma said, as she tried to unbuckle her seatbelt. "I can't move my arm properly." David immediately shifted from pilot mode to father mode, carefully examining Emma's shoulder while fighting off his own panic at the thought of his daughter being seriously injured in a remote location where medical help could be days away. "It might be dislocated or fractured," David said after a careful examination. "We need to get you out of the plane and find some shelter while I figure out how to treat this." As David helped Emma carefully exit the aircraft, he realized that their survival would depend not just on his pilot training and outdoor experience, but on his ability to care for an injured teenager while figuring out how to signal for rescue in one of the most remote areas of the Colorado Rockies. The next 48 hours would test everything David thought he knew about being a father, a pilot, and a survivor, while showing Emma strength and courage she never knew she possessed.
By 1 p.m. on September 23rd, David had helped Emma out of the aircraft and was conducting a thorough assessment of both their situation and his daughter's injuries. The good news was that they had survived the emergency landing with no life-threatening injuries. The challenging news was that Emma's left shoulder was clearly dislocated, causing her significant pain and limiting her mobility just when they needed all their capabilities for wilderness survival. David's first priority was creating a safe area where he could properly examine and treat Emma's injury. Using the aircraft as a windbreak and spreading out their jackets and emergency supplies, he created a makeshift medical area where Emma could rest while he worked on her shoulder. "Em, this is going to hurt, but I need to check your shoulder more carefully," David said, drawing on first aid training he had received during his pilot certification. "Tell me exactly what you're feeling." Emma's shoulder examination revealed what David suspected: a dislocated shoulder joint that would need to be reset quickly to prevent further damage and reduce her pain. David had never performed this procedure before, but his first aid training had covered the basics, and Emma's condition required immediate treatment. "Dad, I'm scared," Emma admitted, as David prepared to attempt reducing her dislocated shoulder. "What if you can't fix it?" "I'm scared too, sweetheart," David replied honestly, using the kind of direct communication that he had learned was most effective in emergency situations. "But I've studied this procedure, and you need relief from the pain. We're going to do this together." David's attempt to reduce Emma's shoulder dislocation was successful on the second try, using a technique called external rotation that gradually moved the joint back into proper position. Emma's relief was immediate and dramatic, though she still had significant pain and limited range of motion. "Oh my God, Dad, that feels so much better," Emma said as David fashioned a sling using his shirt and some rope from their emergency supplies. "How did you know how to do that?" "Pilot training includes medical emergencies," David explained, as he helped Emma get comfortable. "I just never thought I'd need to use it on my own daughter." With Emma's immediate medical crisis addressed, David began assessing their broader survival situation. They were stranded at high altitude, in terrain that would be extremely difficult for ground-based rescue teams to reach. The aircraft's emergency locator beacon was functioning, which meant their general location would be known to search and rescue teams, but finding their specific location in the vast wilderness could take days. David's survival priorities were clear: shelter, signaling, medical care for Emma, and maintaining their strength until rescue arrived. The afternoon was warm, but September nights in the Colorado Rockies could drop below freezing, especially at their elevation. "Em, I need you to help me figure out how we're going to survive until help arrives," David said, including his daughter in the planning process, both to keep her engaged and to benefit from her input. "What do you think our biggest challenges are going to be?" Emma's response demonstrated the intelligence and maturity that David sometimes forgot she possessed. "We need to stay warm tonight, we need to make ourselves visible to rescue planes, and we need to take care of my shoulder so it doesn't get worse." David was impressed by Emma's clear thinking despite their circumstances and her injury. "Those are exactly the right priorities. We're going to work on all of those things together." Using materials from the aircraft and their limited camping supplies,
David and Emma began constructing a shelter that would protect them from wind and cold during the night. Emma's injured shoulder limited her ability to help with physical tasks, but she could provide direction and support while David did the heavy work. "Dad, you're really good at this," Emma observed, as David arranged aircraft seats and emergency blankets to create an insulated sleeping area. "I never knew you knew so much about survival stuff." "Pilot training covers a lot of emergency scenarios," David replied, pleased that their crisis was giving Emma a chance to see capabilities she hadn't known he possessed. "But mostly I'm just thinking about keeping you safe and comfortable until help arrives." As the afternoon progressed toward evening, David realized that their forced landing had created something unexpected. Uninterrupted time together without the distractions of phones, work, or normal teenage activities. For the first time in months, he and Emma were having extended conversations about their thoughts, fears, and feelings. I know things have been weird between us lately. I've been working too much, and I know I haven't been the father you need me to be." "Dad, you don't have to apologize for working hard. I know you're trying to provide for our family. I just miss talking to you sometimes." The conversation that followed was the kind of honest, emotional communication that David had been hoping to achieve during their flying trip. Emma talked about the pressures she was feeling in school, her anxiety about college applications, and her frustration with feeling like she couldn't compete for David's attention with his demanding career. David shared his own struggles with balancing work and family, his fears about Emma growing up and becoming independent, and his regret about missing important moments in her life due to business travel and long work hours. As the sun set over the Colorado Rockies on their first evening stranded together, David Chen and Emma were discovering that their emergency landing had given them something they had been missing for months: time to really talk to each other and remember why their relationship was so important to both of them. But they were also facing a cold mountain night with limited supplies, an injured teenager, and the uncertainty of when rescue might arrive to bring them back to safety.
Sunday morning, September 24th, brought David and Emma their first full day stranded in the remote Colorado meadow. And it also brought new challenges that would test Emma's courage and resilience in ways that surprised both of them. Emma woke with her shoulder feeling somewhat better after a night of rest, but she also demonstrated a determination to contribute to their survival that revealed strength David hadn't fully recognized in his 16-year-old daughter. "Dad, I want to help more today," Emma announced as they shared breakfast consisting of energy bars and water from their emergency supplies. "My shoulder feels better, and I can do things if we're careful about how I move." David's protective instincts wanted to keep Emma resting and avoid any activities that might worsen her injury, but he also recognized that letting her contribute to their survival efforts would be important for both her physical capabilities and her psychological well-being. "What do you think you can handle?" David asked, respecting Emma's desire to be an active participant in their survival rather than just a patient to be protected. Emma's response demonstrated the kind of practical thinking that impressed David. "I can help with signaling activities, I can organize our supplies, and I can help you plan our priorities. I can't do heavy lifting, but I can do a lot of the thinking and planning work." David realized that Emma was offering to contribute her intelligence and problem-solving abilities to their survival, and that her perspective as a different generation might provide valuable insights that he wouldn't think of on his own. Their first project together was improving their signaling capabilities to increase the chances that search aircraft would spot them in the vast wilderness. Emma suggested using reflective materials from the aircraft's interior to create larger and more visible signals that could be seen from greater distances. "Dad, what if we arrange these reflective panels in patterns
that are obviously man-made, Emma suggested, as they worked with materials from the aircraft's emergency kit. Natural formations don't make geometric shapes, so search pilots will definitely notice arranged patterns. Emma's suggestion led to the construction of signal arrows and geometric patterns using aircraft parts, emergency blankets, and bright-colored clothing arranged in the meadow where they would be visible from the air. Emma's artistic sensibilities helped create signals that were both functional and eye-catching. At 11 a.m., their signaling efforts were put to the test when they heard the distant sound of aircraft engines. David and Emma immediately activated their emergency mirror and began signaling toward the sound, hoping that search aircraft might be looking for them. "Dad, there's a plane!" Emma shouted, pointing toward a small aircraft that appeared to be flying a search pattern several miles away. They used their mirror signals and waved bright clothing, but the aircraft was too distant to see them and continued its search in another direction. The near miss with potential rescue was both encouraging and frustrating. It confirmed that search efforts were underway, but it also demonstrated how difficult it would be for aircraft to spot them in the vast wilderness. "We're going to be found," Emma said with confidence that surprised David. "That plane was definitely searching for us. We just need to keep improving our signals and wait for the next aircraft to fly closer." Emma's optimism and practical approach to their situation was helping David maintain his own morale and focus. Instead of dwelling on their challenges, Emma was consistently looking for solutions and improvements to their survival setup. Sunday afternoon brought Emma's most significant contribution to their survival when she suggested a solution to their growing concern about food and water supplies. Emma had noticed a small stream running through the valley below their meadow and proposed that they establish a water collection system that would ensure adequate hydration even if rescue was delayed. "Dad, I know my shoulder limits what I can carry, but I can guide you to the best spots for water collection and help you set up a system that works efficiently," Emma offered. Working together, David and Emma established a water collection and purification system using materials from their aircraft and emergency supplies. Emma's careful observation and planning made the system much more effective than what David would have created working alone. "Em, you're really good at this survival stuff," David said as they tested their water collection system. "You're thinking about problems I haven't even considered yet." "I guess all those documentaries I watch about outdoor adventures finally paid off," Emma replied with a smile that was the first truly lighthearted moment since their crash. As Sunday evening approached, David realized that Emma was not just coping with their survival situation, she was thriving and contributing in ways that demonstrated maturity, intelligence, and courage that he had underestimated. His 16-year-old daughter was proving to be an invaluable survival partner whose perspective and abilities were making them both more likely to survive their ordeal. "Emma, I need to tell you something," David said as they prepared for their second night in the wilderness. "I'm proud of how you're handling this situation. You're showing incredible courage and intelligence." "Dad, I'm proud of you too. I never realized how much you actually know about emergency situations and taking care of people. You've been amazing." As they settled in for their second night stranded together, David and Emma had discovered that their emergency had revealed strengths in both of them that they hadn't fully appreciated before. Emma was far more capable and mature than David had realized, and David's protective instincts and survival skills were more developed than Emma had known. But they were also facing the possibility that rescue might take longer than initially hoped, and that their survival would require continued teamwork and mutual support in increasingly challenging conditions. Sunday night, September 24th, brought David and Emma the coldest conditions they had experienced since their crash, with temperatures dropping to near freezing and strong winds that tested their improvised shelter and forced them to work together more closely than ever before. Emma's shoulder was feeling stronger, but the cold weather was making both of them realize how vulnerable they remained despite their successful survival efforts. At 10 p.m., David woke to find Emma shivering uncontrollably despite their shared sleeping arrangement and emergency blankets. The combination of her injury, stress, and the high-altitude cold was affecting her more severely than David had anticipated. "Em, how are you feeling?" David asked, immediately shifting into medical assessment mode as he checked Emma for signs of hypothermia. "I'm really cold, Dad, and my shoulder is starting to hurt again," Emma admitted through chattering teeth. "I don't think our shelter is warm enough for these temperatures." David realized that they needed to take immediate action to prevent Emma from developing hypothermia, which could be life-threatening in their remote location. Using techniques he remembered from survival training, David began implementing body heat sharing and shelter improvements that would help Emma maintain her core temperature. "Emma, we're going to share body heat to keep you warm," David explained, as he repositioned their sleeping arrangement. "It's a standard survival technique, and it's going to help both of us stay warm through the night." Emma's response revealed both her trust in David and her practical approach to survival. "Whatever it takes, Dad, I know you're going to keep me safe." The night that followed was the most challenging of their entire ordeal, as David worked continuously to monitor Emma's condition while maintaining their shelter against wind and cold that seemed determined to defeat their survival efforts. Emma experienced what David recognized as mild hypothermia symptoms: confusion, lethargy, and difficulty coordinating movements. David immediately implemented aggressive warming techniques, using their emergency heat sources and increasing body heat sharing to raise Emma's core temperature. "Dad, I feel weird," Emma said, her speech slightly slurred from the effects of cold exposure. "I can't think clearly." "You're getting too cold, sweetheart," David replied, working to warm Emma while staying calm and reassuring. "I'm going to get you warmed up, and you're going to be fine." David's treatment of Emma's hypothermia was successful, but it required him to use most of their emergency heat sources and to maintain close physical contact throughout the remainder of the night. The experience demonstrated both how dangerous their situation remained and how completely they depended on each other for survival. At 4 a.m., Emma's condition had stabilized, and she was able to contribute to David's efforts to maintain their shelter against continued wind and cold. Working together in the darkness, they reinforced their shelter and improved their insulation using every technique they could devise. "Dad, I'm sorry I got so cold," Emma said, as her condition improved. "I didn't realize how serious hypothermia could be." "Em, you have nothing to apologize for. You're handling conditions that would challenge experienced outdoors people. I'm incredibly proud of how tough you're being." The conversation that followed, conducted in whispers as they shared warmth in their shelter, was the most honest and emotional communication David and Emma had shared in years. Emma talked about her fears of disappointing David with her academic performance and college choices, while David shared his own anxieties about being an adequate father and providing the guidance Emma needed. "Dad, I want you to know that even if we don't make it out of here, I'm glad we got this time together. I feel closer to you now than I have in years." "We are going to make it out of here," David replied firmly. "But I'm glad, too, that we got this time to really talk to each other. I've missed having these kinds of conversations with you." At 6 a.m., as dawn finally broke over the Colorado Rockies, David and Emma had survived their most challenging night together. Emma's hypothermia crisis had been successfully treated, their shelter had held against severe weather, and they had discovered emotional connection that was stronger than either had realized. But Monday morning also brought the sobering realization that they had been missing for over 40 hours. Their food supplies were nearly exhausted, and they would need rescue soon if they were going to avoid more serious medical complications from their extended exposure to harsh mountain conditions. "Today is the day we get rescued," Emma announced with confidence that helped boost David's own morale. "I can feel it. Someone is going to find us today." Emma's optimism was exactly what David needed to hear as they prepared for what they hoped would be their final day stranded in the wilderness together.
Monday morning, September 25th, 2023, marked the beginning of David and Emma's third day stranded in the Colorado wilderness. But it also brought the most intensive rescue efforts they had experienced since their emergency landing. At 8 a.m., they heard multiple aircraft in the distance, suggesting that search operations had been expanded and were focusing on their general area. "Dad, that sounds like helicopters," Emma said excitedly as the distinctive sound of rotor blades echoed through the mountain valley. "They're definitely looking for us." David immediately began activating all their signaling devices, while Emma, despite her injured shoulder, helped arrange their reflective signals in the most visible patterns they had created. After 2 days of preparation, they were ready to make themselves as visible as possible to searching aircraft. At 8:15 a.m., a Colorado National Guard helicopter appeared over the ridge near their meadow, flying a systematic search pattern that brought it within half a mile of their location. David and Emma immediately began signaling with their emergency mirror, reflective panels, and bright clothing. "There!" Emma shouted, pointing at the helicopter. "They're turning toward us!" The helicopter pilot had spotted their signals and was approaching their meadow for what appeared to be a rescue landing. After 48 hours of uncertainty, David and Emma were about to be reunited with civilization and receive the medical attention that Emma's injury required. Flight medic Sarah Rodriguez was the first rescue person to reach David and Emma as the helicopter landed in their meadow. "Are you David and Emma Chen?" Rodriguez asked as she approached with medical equipment. "That's us," David replied, his voice breaking with emotion and relief. "Emma has a shoulder injury that we've been managing, but we're both okay." "You've done an incredible job taking care of yourselves," Rodriguez said as she began examining Emma's shoulder. "Your signaling setup is one of the best we've ever seen from crash survivors." Emma's medical examination revealed that David's treatment of her dislocated shoulder had been successful, and that she had avoided serious complications despite their challenging conditions. "Mr. Chen, your first aid treatment probably prevented a lot of complications," Rodriguez told David. "You did everything right." The helicopter evacuation process was efficient and carefully managed, with special attention to Emma's shoulder injury during transport. As they lifted off from the meadow where they had spent 48 hours together, David and Emma looked down at their survival camp, with emotions ranging from relief to nostalgia. "Dad, look how small our shelter looks from up here. I can't believe we survived down there for 2 days." "We didn't just survive, Em," David replied, holding his daughter's uninjured hand. "We took care of each other, and we learned things about ourselves that we might never have discovered otherwise." Dr. Patricia Williams, the emergency physician who treated David and Emma at St. Joseph Hospital in Denver, was impressed by their condition considering their 48-hour ordeal in challenging mountain conditions. "David, your treatment of Emma's shoulder dislocation was textbook perfect," Dr. Williams said. "And Emma, your recovery and participation in your own survival shows remarkable resilience." "How did they do so well?" asked a reporter who was covering their rescue story. David's pilot training gave him emergency medical skills and survival knowledge, but more importantly,
They worked together as a team and supported each other emotionally through a very challenging situation. Recovery took David and Emma 3 days in the hospital, as doctors ensured that Emma's shoulder healed properly and that neither of them had suffered complications from their mountain exposure. The most remarkable aspect of their recovery was how their relationship had been transformed by their shared survival experience. Emma and I talked more during those 48 hours than we had in the previous 6 months, David told reporters during their recovery. When you're focused on survival, you don't have time for the petty disagreements and communication barriers that sometimes develop between parents and teenagers. Emma's perspective on their experience reflected new appreciation for her father's capabilities and love. "I never realized how much my dad actually knew about taking care of people and handling emergencies. He kept me safe and comfortable even when I was injured and scared." 6 weeks after their rescue, David and Emma had returned to their normal routines, but with a relationship that had been fundamentally strengthened by their shared ordeal. David had adjusted his work schedule to spend more time with Emma, while Emma had developed new respect for David's knowledge and judgment. "Those 48 hours changed our family forever," David reflected during a mountain safety seminar where he shared their survival story. "Emma and I learned that we could depend on each other in the most challenging circumstances, and that knowledge has made our everyday relationship much stronger." Emma began taking flying lessons as a way to share her father's aviation interests, while David started planning family outdoor adventures that would give them opportunities to apply their newfound survival skills in safer settings. "The crash taught me that my dad and I make a good team when we really communicate and work together," Emma said during a presentation at her high school about their survival experience. "It also taught me that I'm stronger and more capable than I thought I was." David never returned to flying over that specific area of the Colorado Rockies, but he continued flying with Emma as they explored new areas together and built on the partnership they had discovered during their survival ordeal. "Those 48 hours taught me that being a father isn't just about providing and protecting. It's about recognizing your children's strength and capabilities and being willing to work together as equals when the situation demands it." The bond between David and Emma Chen became a testament to how shared challenges can strengthen family relationships and reveal hidden capabilities in both parents and children. Their survival story demonstrated that when families work together and support each other, they can overcome challenges that seem impossible to face alone.
This story, like all the stories we share on Hold On Survival Stories, demonstrates that survival sometimes comes from the most unexpected sources. The love between family members and the strength that emerges when people work together to overcome impossible challenges. David and Emma Chen's 48 hours in the Colorado Rockies shows us that family relationships can become the ultimate survival tool when everything else fails. The heroes of this story include not just David and Emma themselves, but the search and rescue teams who never gave up looking for them, the medical professionals who treated their injuries, and all the people who understand that families become stronger when they face challenges together. Most importantly, this story shows us that survival is often about the relationships we build and the trust we develop with the people who matter most to us. David and Emma's story teaches us that different generations bring different strengths to survival situations, and that parents and children can learn from each other when they're willing to work as equals. David's pilot training and survival knowledge, combined with Emma's intelligence and resilience, created a partnership that was more effective than either could have achieved alone. Most importantly, David and Emma's story shows us that even when we're stranded in the most remote places, even when we're injured and facing harsh conditions, there's always reason to hold on.
Sometimes our greatest strength comes from the people we're trying to protect. And sometimes survival is about discovering capabilities in ourselves and our loved ones that we never knew existed. But before we go, I want to ask you some important questions. Have you ever been in a challenging situation that brought you closer to a family member or loved one? Do you have the kind of relationship with your parents or children that could help you work together effectively in an emergency? And for those of you who enjoy outdoor adventures with family, do you have the skills and preparation needed to take care of each other if your next adventure goes wrong? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Share your own stories of family adventures that tested your relationships, emergency situations where family members supported each other, or experiences that taught you about the strength that comes from working together. Your insights might help other families understand the incredible value of strong relationships in both everyday life and emergency situations. This story touched your heart or taught you something about the power of family bonds under pressure. Please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. Your support helps us bring you more incredible survival stories every week and helps us honor the courage of families like David and Emma, who show us that love really can conquer all. Thank you for listening to Hold On Survival Stories. Stay safe, cherish your family relationships, and remember, sometimes the best survival equipment you can have is someone who loves you enough to never give up, no matter what challenges you face together.